Hola. Bien. Ojalá que bien. También ya te iba a decir la misma. Una semana. Pero la he visto buena también. Los zapatos, qué bueno. Y sabes que estaba mandando el viernes, sábado, todo ropa, zapatos, todo uno. Y te iba a decir, pues, saber a comprar y regalos de Navidad. Yo de muchísimos zapatos de todo, porque como zapatos, y peor de atención a la no lo que me pasa. No es lo que me pasa. Las manos no ya no me da no se le hace así como si fuera un golpe. Pero sí. Como no me puede. En un día. Llevé como una cosa de un balazo. Sí. Y también como de chile. Ya salí de casa, después de porque dice que no tenía espacio para la nueva. Entonces, ¿en cuál uno? Aquí. Sí. Como este. Hizo su mano uno. No me quiero llenar de chanclas en mi casa porque no dejan abiertas. Ahora está. Mi mamá suspende. Sí. No es costumbre mexicana, ¿verdad? No, es mexicano, pero te digo mamá, bien chido. Entonces, mi mamá me dice, ay, no se nada. Y se ofende, no se quita los ojos. Le dije, te va a comprar unas chanclas porque cuando no quieres estar en casa. ¿Tienes alfombra o qué? Piso, pero me gusta comprar alfombras así en el comercio. Ay, así te escuchabas bien. Quiero saber cuál día era esa. Para contar que soy yo.
If you haven't done so, please log into QuickBooks. So welcome back. When you start up QuickBooks and you see this workspace here, there is a button here for Create Estimates. That's what we were doing yesterday. And if you like, you can always use that button. I think in the beginning class, I told the story of one of our students went to work in an accounting office using QuickBooks. So she got to use what she learned, but they told her to turn off this screen. They didn't want her using this screen because it was, I guess, too easy. So doesn't matter. Watch when I click on it. It's going to take me to the same place when we create estimates like we did yesterday. But, you know, when you're working and the boss tells you to do something, you do it because they're the ones paying the money, right? So I'm really curious as to why that would be a problem. Yeah.
If I do an estimate page for a customer, pretend like that's my boyfriend, he does estimates.
Yeah.
Am I able to catch that page?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, let's take a look. So can you print estimates? Sure, let's take a look. I'm going to go to Get Paid and Pay. I'm going to click on the estimates in the navigator. And we'll take a look at one of the ones we did yesterday and see how to print it. Hey, how you doing?
good. I come very quickly, teacher.
Okay, good to have you here.
Yesterday, I can open my estimated.
It didn't pop up like this?
Yeah, because it's open customer.
Hmm. Did you ever get it to come up? Yeah. Okay. So because it should. Yeah, estimates. Huh. Okay, click on here so that we want. Click this little triangle. Okay, there it is. Okay,
So
let's do this. Scroll down to the product. Okay, click on product. We just want to get one logged in. See what happens. So go ahead and click that. Change this to save and close. Now click.
it's because I need
Yeah, that's if you want to customize how this layout is. That's like this. That's weird. Click in here. Because it should. Especially now that you have an estimate. So you see one estimate.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Because I need to take a photo.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
That's fine. Yeah. Yeah. There's another spot I was just mentioning. Well, that's going to work because it's been created. Huh, that works. So this is another way to access it.
Oh.
Personally. So I've created two. What should happen is when you select, let's try it online. When you click estimates, it should come up with something like this. Okay, let's do it from the customer level. So I happen to know yesterday we did teddy bear as an estimate.
I can customer all
Yeah, that works.
and dates. I remember your choice different dates because look,
Yeah. We did November 1st. Just to make it some point in the future. So when you want to print an estimate, I'm going to go to the customer. Click on TED. And because we did this yesterday, see here on the customer list, you've got estimate. And then you have the option to print. Now, here's the problem. I'm not actually physically hooked to a printer or even by Bluetooth, because nowadays you can have the wireless connections. But this is what it would look like if I just printed it. And you'll see a little printer up here. It'll do the preview, but I don't have one of the printers to actually print out a piece of paper. But if you did, it would show up there and you just hit print like you normally do. This one, Microsoft Print to PDF here. If you ever need to print it as a file, it's not printing, but it says printing. And what it does, it creates a file, a PDF file of this document. So it's kind of like, I would think of save as PDF. But anyway, then you can email it. Or sometimes you can take it, stick it on a thumb drive, and then take it over to a printer that will print, and then run it off just like normal. It doesn't have to be if you've got if your laptop or your desktop is connected to a printer. You could just hit print like this, and then your printer should show up here. Now mine doesn't. These are just like the defaults. You could send it to OneNote. If you have a fax driver in there, you can send it to a fax. But if you had a like HP 2100, HP 2100 would show up here. Even if you're connected to wireless. So once your laptop is hooked up to a wireless printer, the wireless should show up here too. And then it'll actually print out a piece of paper. But if it doesn't, this is the alternative. The thing with QuickBooks though is, I'm going to close this window up here and show you that you don't even have to do that. It's up to you. You know, everybody does it the way they like. So I'm going to close that. That's the print preview screen. And I'm just looking at my old, oops, wrong line. That's not how I do it. I need to go to the annotate mouse. Click new. And so even from here, I can click on the estimate. I can load it up. And you'll see you've got print down here. So that works too. So the screen looks a little different, but it's the same idea. Same document. Okay. So now again, if I try to hit print, it's going to bring up the drivers. And there it is, just like that. So you can go that way too. The other way is you can download, and if I click on download, it'll take this document and save it as a PDF on the laptop or whatever you're using. And you can tell, because see up here, oops, I flashed for a second, but it did save it under downloads. And I can see up here, it now says .pdf. So that's an indication of what kind of file it is. And let me go to my documents, my downloads. So I click on downloads. There's estimate 1004. And you can always open that. Oh, really? Oh, okay, I was going to say. So usually if you want to look at it, you open the reader. The reader is free from Adobe. But now that it's like that, I can send it as an email attachment or whatever.
Is it always going to be a copy or just depends what you have?
It depends what you have on your computer. It's PDF files can be opened by the new Microsoft Words. So where Microsoft Word will open it. See, Adobe wants to be my default because there are competitors that will do it. And some of the browsers will do it too now. But anyway, so lots of choices. Yeah, you're welcome. And if you want, you can set them up on your in your files because you got 4 companies. Just set them up as a quick company. Have them write estimates off of QuickBooks, see if he likes it. And then charge him. So you're his bookkeeper now, you got to get paid. Yeah. Well, the deal is, so if he pays you or anybody to do it, then that is a tax write-off on his profits. Then you get income. So, it works that way. And then if you do that, and let's say you have to drive it over, or even if you drive to the post office to drop it off in the mailbox, that mileage is deductible too. So all these deductions you can get. So it's legitimate business expenses. If you have to go out like after class and you're hungry, so you're going to have to eat something. If you go through a drive-through, that's a meal that you're doing on behalf of business, and that becomes deductible. Now you don't get all the money back, but if you're a lot of people around 33% state and federal taxes, you get about a third back. Yep. Well, gas is mileage. They don't do gas. They do the miles. And I think, let's see real quick. I believe it's 62 cents now. Let's see. You just do this, IRS, oops, mileage. And it's so common, it'll pop right up. $58.5 for 2022. See, it went up half a cent over here. Again, they don't pay you that, but what you do is on your taxes, it's a deduction. And you say, all right, so I drove 10 miles, that'd be $5. So that's $5 I did not earn. So whatever your earnings are, you deduct it. If you're close to another tax bracket, like you earned $100 too much, do a lot of driving, it'll force you down under that. And then that does save you a lot of money. 1% of your taxes or your salary could come back to you if that's what your tax bracket is. So lots of things. Then one guy, I don't know if this was ever tested, but he was talking about, he wrote a book about all the things you could do if you have a business, doesn't it? And the thing is, your business doesn't have to be successful for 5 years. After 5 years, then they start saying, well, that's more of a hobby if you're not making money. But you got 5 years to do stuff, to mess around. And he got t-shirts for his kids, and he put his company logo on the t-shirt. So he said, I clothe my kids, and it's a tax deduction because they're advertising. He put it as his advertising budget because everybody who sees a t-shirt will see his logo. Sure. So like I said, I don't know if they ever tagged him on that. You do, if you get too creative, you do take your chances. But anyway, things like that. I mean, you do really do advertising, do business miles, things along those lines. Those are legitimate expenses. Oops, I close this. So you can always just Google it, and it changes every year. And you'll see there's, you actually, if you are donating to charity, let's say you're driving stuff at a Goodwill, see they got 14 cents a mile. What happens though is for most people, before you get too excited, most people, they use what's called the standard deduction. So rather than having everybody itemized, meaning keeping a list, they'll say, all right, we know everybody's going to try to do a deduction. So we're just going to give everybody a blanket amount. If you keep a list and your amount goes higher than that, then yes, itemize. If it's not, just take the standard deduction. So that's what most people do on their 1040. But that's the thing is, if you ever use Microsoft Excel, it's real easy to set up a spreadsheet, keep track of your mileage going to charity. Like I said, Goodwill, all that stuff. Every time you take a donation, keep those receipts and then keep your mileage and then add it up at the end of the year and check it out. Yeah.
So is it better, like if I live in Modesto, is it better if I drive to a Goodwill that's further away?
Well, again, you're not getting that money back. You're getting basically a third of it, because what they're doing is they're saying, here is your income. You can deduct any mileage, this much per mile. And then we're saying, this is your new total earnings, whatever it is, minus your original earnings, minus your mileage. So usually wear and tear in the car, and nowadays with gas, it really wouldn't do much. But if you're going to do it anyway, you might as well. By the way, you're taking classes here. If you wanted to, you could track the mileage this way. That's an education expense. And if you bought clothes for class, because you got to look nice in class, okay, that's an education expense. Now, if you bought $50,000 worth of clothes for a 3-week class, they'll probably question that. But you buy one new thing, okay, that's an expense. And then anything you buy, if you buy a laptop, all those can be education expenses. So they do add up, and a lot of people, because they don't track them, don't realize how much they do add up.
Teacher, when I work and make it taxes in state, I need a certificate, license, maybe drive license, or what needed for work or make it taxes. Because account you learn in certificate bachelor degree, and for work make it taxes, because I make my tax every year.
Yeah.
So I wanna work, make it tax, I need a license, certificate license.
Let me see here real quick. I don't want to tell you wrong.
In Brazil, you it's different, but in Brazil, you need to get a bachelor degree and license. Make a test for make a test in 4 years. You need it renew. Yeah.
I think so. Let's see. I don't want to tell you wrong. To be official, here's what you require. Let me go back to this. You are required to be, where was it? So, or it says registered tax preparer, right? To be registered. But I don't what I wouldn't want to tell you wrong. I'm not sure that you can't do taxes without being a registered tax preparer. I think because there was some controversy about that they wanted to make it in California required. So it might be just anybody could do it. The thing is, when it comes down to doing your taxes, you want somebody to do it right. So you'll probably go to somebody who's registered rather than just your neighbor or something. But, anyway, so both of the state and the federal say registered. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know for sure. You'd have to check if you really went into that, because that's something you want to double check on. But here's, yeah, see,
Specific license.
it says you don't need a specific license. But this is the trick, not the trick, but the thing to watch for. This article, I think, is for federal, for the IRS. But there's two taxes, the IRS and the California. And California always has rules. So I wouldn't be surprised if California did. But I think, and I don't remember how many years ago, it was before COVID, there was a big controversy about, well, you got to have a license to groom a dog, but you don't have to do taxes. We should change that. And so they were talking about it, but I don't know if they ever did it. So that's your answer. But when you see on the news or in the commercials around tax time, they'll say, who got in trouble? I think it was TurboTax. Intuit's TurboTax got in trouble for this. Free. Oh yeah, that was it. Free. Remember the commercials? Free, right? So they were making it sound like they do everything for free. Well, they didn't. They did your federal for free, then charged you for the state. Well, they made enough on the state because nobody can just do the federal and not do state. So somebody sued them and they said, you said free, commercial. You said free like 30 times. It's not free. Well, we did, but you got to read the fine print. And then they said, no, that's not good enough. So they got in trouble. They had to stop doing that. So that's one of those things you have to do both. And that's the expectation, is people want to get them both done. And it doesn't really make sense to go to one place for federal, another place for state. So, once they do the federal one, you think, oh, okay, go ahead, do the state. And I'll feel like I'm getting a freebie. So the other thing too is you can use the software, the TurboTax software yourself. And there's free filing now. Last December, they tried to charge. Whew, that was a huge blow up. I was all over the news that you're doing what? That's not right. So they went back to free filing. It's just you have to use the software and you have to buy the software. And you have to buy it every year and get the updates. So that's basically, by the way, if you're a tax preparer, that's what they do, is they buy the software and they're just keying it in. The advantage is if they've had training, they know some of the common issues that come up. So they know specifically like about driving for charity and stuff like that. So any question on the printing? Okay. Go back here. So I'm doing it at the customer level, just looking at the different estimates here, or the one estimate we did for them. And you remember yesterday we did the tracking of from the estimate to an invoice to the payment. And if I just look in my customer's history, I can see it here. Oops. So you can see it two places. I go back to my customer list. All right, well, let's practice the estimates. So it's going to go to the first customer here. I want to create an estimate for my first customer. So if you click the drop-down list, you should be able to create estimate. So the customer, because we did it at the customer screen, all the customer information pops up. We'll make the expiration date November 1st again. It's only a day difference. Go ahead and pick any product. And if you want to add more products, by the way, always feel free to do so. So I'm going to do the company
So
logo.
every time I needed creation, I needed opening here, right? You ever done?
No. So let's take this here. Now, if you did it your way, you get the same thing, except this would be blank. But it gets you the same spot. It just kind of depends on what you find more convenient. And just because I started with her doesn't mean at this point I could switch it over to somebody else. You know, you're all till you save it, it is wide open. Okay, so there it is. Down here. I'm going to do 7 baseball caps, and that'll be it. Now, since we're talking about printing earlier, you notice it's set back to save and send, and we were doing save and close. I'm going to click on save and send. Now, because I have an email address associated with this customer, this will work. If you don't, it'll say, can't go forward, can't send it till you got an email. So you'd have to include it. I'm going to cancel this and you can see where it was. Right there. No, because we're in class, it doesn't have to be a real email address. But there has to be something in there. So when you save and send, it records it. And you see this little email, and it's going to send it as an email. And this will be an attachment automatically. So we're talking about printing it, you know, saving it, attaching it. You don't have to do all that. Just send and close, and it will go off. And pardon me? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Just
Yesterday you showed access, right? And learning more.
Mhm.
For I think so.
Yeah. See the map? There you go. And put in this box. And I copy it tonight. Let's see. I'm going, I don't know if there really is somebody here at this .com, so I'm going to really mess up because it's going to try to send it. And I think it's going to stop me because I don't have my email address connected to this. But I don't want to send somebody's going to say, what is this? So I'm really messing up the address. See what happens. Yeah. You know what? So I'm going to click on Allie. There's the estimate. I'm going to click on it. I never tried this before. I'm going to put my email address in here and see what happens. So I'm going to save and send again. And then after break, I'll have to look and see if I got it. It'd be interesting because what email address is it going to say it came from? Oh, I know. Wait a minute. Did I do that? I'm going to quick detour here to my account settings. Okay, so it did. See my company email? Remember we set up our files? I did put that in. That's how I log in fact. So it's going to use that, and I'll bet I do get it. I'm sending it from and to the same address. So it's whatever email address shows up here, I'll bet it's going to be. And the way I got to that was I hit this little gear up here.
For this one is
I went to account settings. Yeah. You can change it, yeah, if you want to.
If you change it right there, what about when you log in? Is it not
No, I'm pretty sure not. Oh, in fact, I know not. Because this is not the email I used for login.
Yeah.
You know how I know? Because I accidentally put this in once. See, I put Danny, I have both. So when I set this up, I must have forgotten. But anyway, on the login, I use the Danny.Garrett. So there's an NY here. And then I tried to log in with this yesterday and it said, no such name. And I thought, what? Oh, right, I got it. So you can have different ones. Yeah. I could take a quick detour here. I believe, let me see. Shoot, there is something. Okay, I know that doesn't exist. All right. So let me do it. Go back to my estimate. So that was from the from. And I'm going to change the expiration date just so it looks different. I'll make it the 2nd. I'm going to save and send. Thinks it sent it. That'll be very interesting. I never tried to do that before. I hope it doesn't work. You know what that, because if it works, you know what that means? If QuickBooks is allowing me to make up email addresses and say it's from that email address, and I just did it for estimates, but it's going to work the same way for invoices, somebody who is not as scrupulous as we are could go in and say, here's the invoice for $10,000 that you owe me, better pay up next week, and can fake an address, an email address, if it works that way. That's how the scammers do it, is they don't use QuickBooks. Well, I don't know, maybe they've been using QuickBooks, but anyway, if you go back here into your account settings, see, I just made up this gibberish. If it goes out, I'll receive it. It will say it came from this. If it works, I gotta believe it wouldn't work. Well, it took that. Yeah, because that's what you'll see. You'll get an email from angry agent. What? Let me change it back. Okay, so there's the estimate. So it's marked pending. So we'll go ahead and do like I did yesterday and say, all right, she received it. She accepted it. We're going to update the status. Go from pending to accepted. I'll put her name in and today's date. Once again, you can click OK without doing this, but that would be, it's handy to have it in there, especially if you're dealing with an organization where there's multiple people. The other way, by the way, is you could make a note down at the bottom. Let's go back to the estimate real quick. That little accepted by is only for internal use, meaning only I'm going to see it. If I want them to see what happened, I could always put a message here, type it out. Right? So that way, when you send a copy of this with the invoice, it's right there. And then you don't get a phone call. Hey, who approved this? This time I'm going to save and close. Otherwise, I'm going to spam myself.
Next time. Accept, right?
Yep.
So this one,
Yeah. So accept it.
accept, okay.
Yeah. That's good. So what I just did, because remember when you accepted it, we put her name in as the person who accepted today's date. The thing is, I know that doesn't show up on her paperwork. If I wanted to show up on the customer's paperwork, I clicked on estimate. So I open it up and you'll see what I typed in here. I put it here. This way, it's always now saved on the estimate permanently. Plus, when I send it to her or whoever, like her accounts payable person, it'll be there as a note too. So if you want them to see it, you can put it there. You can do both. If you're working with an individual, you don't have to do that if you didn't want to. It saves a little time. But if you're dealing with a large company and they don't always talk to each other, it's not a bad idea to do that. Because here is a general rule, and it's not fair, but you are only going to be as good as the worst person you have to work with. So if you're sending this estimate to Alleyway and she doesn't know what she's doing, then what's going to happen is it's going to gum up all your works. It's going to slow you down. So if you can explain it as simple as possible, keep it, lots of notes, great. Then you're much better off. I didn't turn my tax on either. So it's kind of like, well, why do I have to tell her? She accepted it. She knows she accepted it. If I'm worried that somebody else may not, her boss may not realize it, I'll just put a little note there. That's all done. What I'm trying to avoid and anticipate is for to get a call from her boss saying, well, I don't know who accepted this. Don't do anything yet. We're going to have to do an investigation or find out. And I don't want all that. I just want a smooth process. So by putting notes in there, it's kind of on them to figure that out and to deal with it. And I'll probably still get a phone call, but at least I tried. Okay, so from here, we're going to go ahead and create the invoice. And again, we're going to do it says remaining. Well, they haven't invoiced anything. So of course, if I say here the remaining total of all lines means everything. Later on, if it's been split and they've already been invoiced for a portion of it, you can just do the remaining, whatever's left on the invoice, and we'll see that. So this way I'll just create invoice. There's the invoice, just like we did before. And I'm going to save and close. While we're here, I'll go ahead and receive your payment. So you'll see there's receive payment here. So I've still got two other invoices shows me for, but it's the last one, the 1006. Today's date, I'm going to go ahead and receive. And I'm going to save and close. Oops. I hit the wrong one. So I want to switch it to save and close. Oh. Man, let me look at it. Yeah. So here's our payment. It did go through the first time. I just clicked too many times. A little impatient. And you can see the status is closed. And just to confirm it, I'm going to go into my chart of accounts. I send it directly to my advanced checking, so I'll view the register. And there she is, today's date. Okay. All right, so it's 6:55, it's break time. So we'll come back at 7:05.
I need to put message, right? Necesito poner algo, si no, no puedo. It's not open. It's not open. Creation invoice. Teacher, I forward your email. My daughter stay. Thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
It's because I why? Don't open. Don't open.
donde está la clase de la rata. Y ahí puedes volver a ver.
Sí. Esto no hace que
A veces solo tienes que tener y apagar otra vez. Pero no es que-
It's pretty good. They say if you speak 3 languages, you're automatically a genius.
Yeah. My neighbor is es diferente. Lo haces bien.
Pero ahora tiene mucha y aprendí bastante todavía. Thank you, right?
Yeah. That was today's, right? The 18th. Try cancel. Can you go back to the email link? I think that was today. Yeah. Because you logged in before, and we do have people on. I think we have 3 right now. Yeah, you might try turning off the phone and turning it back on to reset everything. Because yeah, it's active now. That's the right link. You're welcome.
Good night. Que te vaya bien.
Yasmin, how's your internet connection holding up? Oh, good. Something's working around here.
You know what? I think the other one, that the student one, wouldn't work good with the guest one.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I still don't have an answer to that. Because it used to, that's the one we used for 3 or 4 years. So they must have changed something. Nope. I asked the administrator, I told you, went over to Patterson High School. So the person who's filling in for him, I asked her, and I asked her today, and she said she's checking on it. But I thought I had one working, but it's not. So we're back here. I did get my email. Remember I said I was going to send myself a copy? So the question was, what would it look like? So even though it was alleyway, I put my email address. So here it is. And you'll see it's a breakdown in text of the estimate. Yeah, and then there is this document down here as a PDF file. And when I open it, there it is. So you didn't have to do all the printing and attaching. So you get it as text and then as a document. So this was the first one, right? I did it again. Remember, I started making a goofy address to see what would happen. Here's what happens. I'm still not convinced this is a good idea for QuickBooks, but see at the top here, this is the later one. It did not use my goofy address. It didn't use it on either of them. It uses this email address, quickbooks@notification.intuit.com. So there she is, she got back. So even though I made up a goofy address, or I said I'm IRS, it wouldn't do that. But here's the thing. It did use my company name. And I have a hunch if I did say US Government Internal Revenue Service, right? That would be what people see first, and everything else is kind of pushed over. And if they're using QuickBooks, it might throw them, and they'll think, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. And they'll pay my invoice. So apparently I do get to control what it says, but it's always going to be from this email address. and you can see the second one. And I know it's the second one because I did. Remember, I changed the date. I said, let's make this one the 2nd of November. But I did end up sending myself 2 copies. So that's another thing it'll allow you to do, which I didn't know, that you could do that too. And that could be a problem because if somebody's not careful, when they think they're clicking save and close or clicking save and send all the time, it would go send every time they made an adjustment. So got to be careful of that. Yeah, just make sure when you're here. Well, I mean, okay. I guess you probably couldn't do it accidentally. You'd have to realize something's going on because remember, it comes up with that screen. But if you do that all the time on a regular basis, what happens is you stop seeing it. It'll pop up, oh yeah, sure, whatever. And you click, like right now, if I go the estimate, even though it's closed, I can still save and send. But here, here's your chance to catch it. And then you say, oh, I didn't want to do that. But if you don't see this anymore, because this is the standard procedure, you can easily send and close. And now I just sent myself a 3rd copy. So that's probably something to watch out for. Well, what's funny, let's go back to the estimate again, is if I print it down here, see this print later? And I click print. And I think, how did I do it? I did download and then close it. There it comes. I didn't. There was one time it asked me, did you want to mark it to be printed? That it had been printed. Maybe it was from here. So it will do that. It'll tell you this has been printed. Okay. There we go. So now what I did is I told it, I haven't printed this. I want to print it later. It doesn't change its status, of course. But now I click print. Yeah. See this? So do you want to mark this estimate as having been printed? Yes. Okay. I would think it should do the same thing with the email. Do you want to mark this one as already been emailed? But they didn't. So I'm sure, if you can imagine somebody doing something, it happens somewhere out there. So I imagine in one of the new updates, I'll bet that changes, but it changes pretty quickly. All right, so let's go back to our customer list. I'm going to go to the next customer down the list and make a new estimate. This one I'm going to make a little bit larger. So I'll do 2 items. It should have been received last time. So if I go back to Allie. So for Allie, we received it. Now, she owes me money from another invoice that she's not paid yet. So when I did the invoice, I only did that one, or when I did the payment, I only did that one invoice off the estimate. So if I look, see, I still got up here 151.52 open, 130 is overdue. That's the oldest one. So I just closed that in our estimate out. And to prove it, I can see here, there's my estimate I made today. There's one linked invoice. I click on that. It'll show me the invoice. And then here it should say paid, and there it is. So I got a big paid stamp up here. Now that doesn't mean she didn't pay everything else. I mean, that she paid everything else. In fact, I can tell she still owes me money when I look at her account. So I'm about to do the same thing with my next customer, who also owes me some money, Bob here. But instead of receive payment, I'm going to use the drop-down arrow to create estimate. So just because he owes me money doesn't mean I can't do anything else until he makes a payment. I can do anything. If I want to give him credit, I can make as many invoices and he cannot pay them all year. So I said I'm going to make 2 items. Sell some more books. And then how about pens? And I'll save and close. So of course I got one estimate here. I'll go and click on that. And we're going to start invoice. Now you'll notice when we did this before, it was just create invoice. The reason it says start invoice is because of the nature of estimates means he doesn't necessarily have to pay everything on one invoice. That's what we're going to do now is we'll start the invoice. So invoice number 1007 is going to show up here. And then here I'm going to select this estimate and incorporate it into this invoice. So we'll click add. And then we get this screen, and now this time we are not going to do the whole amount. We're only going to bill for half. Let's do custom amount. Well, no, let's do the easy one first. So let's do 50% of each line. So what it does, it divides it in half. I'm going to select that. And again, it's a radio button, so it defaults automatically to this one, but we're going to change it to this. And because you can only do one at a time, once you click on the other button, the first one turns off. So I'll copy to invoice. So you'll see the invoice is only for half. And then it does add the sales tax for that half. It even puts a notation on each line here. 50% up, $39.90, 50% of 100. And you can see it did the math over here. All right. So in this case, he's doing, it's called progress invoicing. So we're going to invoice him now, do some, maybe we're going to deliver the goods. And then at the time he gets the goods, he'll pay the final invoice, which would be the second half. So this one's just like we normally do, save and close. You'll see though that estimate, because it hasn't been closed and it hasn't been finished, I mean, it hasn't been completely fulfilled, it's still going to show as open as one invoice. And down here, I still have start invoice. What's changed though is when I look, I do now have an invoice for him that I can pay. Or I can receive payments. So I'm going to clear the filter. I'll click on receive payment. Now, again, he owes me from February when we uploaded him. So you'll see here, there's 2 invoices. The old one, which we're not going to take care of today, and the new one. And I can tell it's the new one by today's date. So I'm going to turn the check mark off on the first one. We'll leave that alone. And he's just going to pay the $75.46. See how that works? So I'm going to save and close. I do have it set going to my advanced checking account up here, right? Okay, so because that estimate hasn't been completed, say a couple days go by and I come back here to estimate. We send him everything, he's happy. Now I can click Start Invoice. Yes, it's a bill. So when I send him the invoice or the estimate, he doesn't owe us anything. He doesn't owe us anything until I send him the invoice. Now, when he gets that, he owes us. So he's paying off, in this case, half of it. Then we get the stuff, and now we got it, send it over to him. It does say, you know, I kind of wish it would say continue invoice or something over here to show, hey, we already did one invoice for it. And he'll still show the full estimate amount, even though he's already paid half, because the estimate hasn't changed, right? He just happened to put some money down. And again, you'll use this a lot when you are, if you're doing construction, usually if you need to buy stuff. And there, you know, it's construction estimates can be really dicey on both sides. Customers can be kind of flaky. Sure, they get all excited, they want this new pool you're going to build for them. But then they start realizing how much it costs, and well, I want to cancel. Well, if they call and cancel, and the pool company just bought all the equipment for it and scheduled all their employees, they're going to take a big hit, a big loss. So that's why it's called earnest money. So a customer will pay something down, like half of it. And usually in the contract, it'll say the down payment or the first payment is non-refundable. Meaning once you pay that, once you agree, you're committing. So I can go ahead and use that money maybe to buy some of my stuff, but maybe it doesn't cover all the stuff. But I'm willing to do that because I know now you're on the hook legally. So I'll go ahead and take the chance that you're going to follow through with it. And then when they say, we changed our mind, you say, oh, okay, well, I'm keeping that money and I'm going to sue you for the rest. Because, you know, you signed the contract. If you didn't want to do it, don't sign the contract. The other way is true too. Sometimes contractors are not always doing what they're supposed to do, and they'll promise the moon. And if the customer pays 100% up front, then the contractor says, okay, we'll get to it. And then you never hear from them again, right? Took off the money. My sister-in-law had that happen. And then you got to go after them. You got to take them to court, something like that. So that's why every side agrees, all right, not 100%, but half or 25%, or, you know, something reasonable. So that way everybody has something in the game and something to lose if this project doesn't go through. So that's one of the reasons you'll have progress invoicing. The other two is, depending on what the project is, all the costs for materials can be borne by the customer first. And then me as the contractor, I'll say, okay, I'll cover the labor, and then you pay me, and then I'll pay the labor, and I'll get some profit out of it too. So that can work. But oh yeah.
He has to go fix it.
Yeah. It should be in the agreement. There should be some kind of, whatever they're signing, the contract, sometimes contractors do a bad job, and then see if they hire the replacement person and the customer doesn't really realize how messed up it was. So in that case, it's good for the second contractor to take pictures of everything, the before and after, and as much as you can spell out, like, let's go back to the estimate here. I can still change it. Oops. it is. So in this little box, it just looks like a little box down here, but actually can be very valuable. I have to scroll down. Message is displayed on estimate, right there. This is where it can be right smack dab on the estimate. It says, we'll replace, let's try to be as specific as possible. So say it was a fence. We'll replace the posts and the pickets, okay? So then, after it's all done, it turns out that the first contractor had dug without checking and so damaged a pipe, right? Well, pipe damage is not here on the estimate. And hopefully, took pictures ahead of time. Say, look, that it wasn't us. Here's a picture. This is what it looked like before. Look at the date on the picture. So we can do that for you, and I'll even give you a discount because I feel bad you got taken by, that kind of thing. But it's not part of this estimate. So don't try to blame the second contractor for the first one's problem. And yeah, those are tough situations to be in for both the customer and the second contractor. The customer can then go after the first contractor if they had a license. And what will happen is a lot of contractors will work without a license because it is expensive. And what they'll do is turn around and say, I don't have to go through all that, so I can charge you half. Well, the customer thinks, good deal. But if they're not very good, then they can cause more trouble than it's worth. The customer can turn around and try to sue them, but usually if they're like that, they don't have any money and they're hard to find. My sister-in-law did finally get the first contractor to pay her back, but it's because she knew somebody else he did it for, and they happen to know his sister, or some way like that. That was a long way around. But when she tried to call his number, it was disconnected and everything. So that was pretty bad. It's for kitchen cabinets. And the whole time, her kitchen was a mess. She couldn't use her kitchen because it was all torn apart, and he hadn't finished it. So that's what the estimates can do. It protects everybody. And if the customer sees the estimate, it says, okay, and can we also add here a note that you're going to give me a report on any damages you find? Oh, okay, that's a smart thing, Dad. Sure, I can do that. And so you do that, and now the contractor says, okay, here's my work, and here's my report. Here's what I found. Here are the pictures or whatever, and they can go from there.
Would that little message go to the yes.
Can, yes. Because usually what will happen is, I don't think when we print it is a spot for it, but usually somebody initials it or signs it. And I do know, we'll get into this because we're going to modify the forms. So see, here's the accepted by and date. Remember we put that in there? So you would have that. If you wanted to, you can customize this form to put a box for signatures. Contractor signature, customer signature. So before work starts, everybody signs off. And this document is what a judge, who the judge doesn't know what's going on. They just find out there's this case in front of them. They'll look at the documentation, and basically the documents rule, because that's all the judge has to go off. And then if you ever watch People's Court or Judge Judy, oh, but he said, well, I don't have that. It doesn't say here he said that. He may have said that. I don't know. But I can only go off of what I showed you. Do you have any proof of that he said that? That kind of thing. And then that's why it has to be documented. So that's why you do an estimate in the first place. It just makes it clearer for what people are receiving. In our case, it's pretty easy because they're items. It's not services. Okay, I'm gonna just close this. All right, so we paid half the estimate. There it is. So again, even though we've done one invoice, I'm still going to use this click on Start Invoice because we're starting a new invoice on the same estimate. Okay, so again, it looks exactly the same. We've got this add the estimate to our invoice. But here we go. So remember, our total was 150 or something. It says the remaining balance here. Or I can cut this one in half too, if we agree to that. So if I click allow this one to go through with 50%, this would be an invoice for $34, $35, half of what they still owe, and then they still owe us again later on. So you can do these progress invoicing, especially big projects. They'll do this like a quarter, quarter here, quarter in the beginning, quarter halfway through, quarter 3/4 of the way through, and then final quarter at the end. You could do that. You could do 10% and do 10 invoices if you felt like it. So we're going to do all the remaining, make it easy. And I'll copy to invoice. So the way I'm doing this, it was half and half. So Bob paid half. Now Bob's going to pay the other half once he gets this invoice. I can even put a message over here. This completes our project. Okay, so just a little reminder, it's the end, we're done. Save and close. Now, all my estimates are gone. Well, I mean, they're not active. Here, I see 0 estimates. And when I look at Bob, I'm ready to receive his payment on the second half of the estimate. So I'm going to receive payment. Again, he owes me back from February. I'm going to turn that one off. He's just going to pay today's. And there's the amount. It's going to go to the checking account. That's good. And save and close. I can check my checking account through the chart of accounts. And there's two checks from Bob, or 2 payments. I forgot to mark them as checks. So that's a split. Usually they're not on the same day, but we're in class, so we did it on the same day. Now, while you could have multiple projects for one customer, and you can either invoice them together or separately. So what can happen is they can pay the first payment on the first project. On the other project, there are 2 payments in, and the third project, there are 3 payments in, that kind of thing. That's perfectly possible. And then that's why QuickBooks is handy. It'll help keep track of all that. And then sometimes a customer will say, so we got 3 projects. Can you invoice me separately for each project? I say, sure. And then what that means is when we got to that listing of the different payments, or the invoice from the estimate, let me go back to the customers. Here's Bob. When we did this invoice, it was only for that project. Because remember, I didn't include anything else. So what happened is on the right-hand side, when you create the invoice, you'll see the 2 estimates. And you say, okay, I'm only this one, and then I'll turn around and do the other one. So it's a separate document. Okay, I got that. Now, let's do another one. So I'll choose dug holes here. I'm going to create an estimate from scratch. And I will just pick a few things here. I'll make sure they're all taxable. So this time I got 3 items in multiple quantities. So I've got baseball caps, t-shirts, and pens. Okay.
In the expedition, I need put expedition date.
Oh, right. We should do that. Huh? You don't have to,
Okay.
but you should. That's a good idea. Thank you for reminding me. Let's make it November 1st. That's a good practice to have. Because like I said, prices change, especially now, so quickly. You don't want to be on the hook forever. And then we'll save and close. So I'll click on the one estimate to look at it. Clicking up here, and there's Doug. Okay, so for Doug, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start an invoice. And here it is. And by the way, on the right-hand side here, if they had more than one project, they would show up here. You'd see estimate 1007, estimate 1562, you know, whatever the number is, you'd see them all added up there, and it can be as many as you want. I'm going to go ahead and click on add. It's going to give me this screen. So I'm going to select 50% of the 787 and copy to invoice. So again, we've got 50% here. And we'll save and close. I'm going to go back to my customers. Here's Doug. I'm going to receive his payment, but again, only for this estimate, this invoice. So the one down here in January, or pardon me, December, I'm turning off. So we're not going to include that one. Only today's. So that's the $849.52. Again, I forgot to do this last time. I'll say it's a check. Check number 6722. Obviously, this is not required by QuickBooks, but it is a good idea if they did. Because again, later on, if you did have a client that had 2 or 3 projects, they'll say, well, didn't I pay for this on check number 6722? Let me look it up. You can do a search on this number here, this reference number, and say, no, I'm sorry. Your check number 6722 covered invoice number 1009. Oh, now I see, you know, that kind of thing. So you're making those connections with the piece of paper they sent you, the check, to the payment. And that does happen. Sometimes honestly, and sometimes there's stalling because they don't have the money. Okay, so I'm gonna click on Doug, and Doug had an estimate, got an invoice, yeah, that was good, and made a payment. Okay, so here's the problem. Doug changes his mind and does not want the second half. So he calls up and he says, all right, you sent me half the stuff. Oh, let's see, no, you ordered stuff for me. I already paid you half, you can go ahead and keep that, but I just need half of what I ordered, right, on the estimate. So I want to cancel. Now, if you want, you could say, you know, Doug, you did commit to this, and you could hold them to it. Or you could say, you know, Doug, we're good customers. You're a good customer. I'm going to do this for you. and then make him feel like he owes you a favor or something, right? Because what do they say? The customer's always right. So when I click on the one estimate, it's still here. I'm going to open it. And here it is, right there. And you'll see I have the one linked invoice, right? And if I wanted to, from this point, I could create the invoice, but I don't want to. I want to actually close it. So over here on the left-hand side, where it says accepted, I'm going to say closed. I'll say, Doug, today's date. I'll save and close. And it's going to warn me. So this estimate is a link to that invoice. And that invoice is linked to the payment. So it says you're making a change at the beginning of that stream. Are you sure you want to do that? So just asking you just to double check, because sometimes it can be a mistake. But in this case, nope, that's what the customer said. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click on yes. I go back to customers. See no more estimates. It's gone. So I never invoiced for the second half because they canceled, but he did agree to pay the first half. See how that works? And that can happen. Now, Doug calls up next month and does the same thing to me again. All right, Doug, it's becoming a pattern. No more canceling. I want 100% up front this time. Let's take a look at Doug here. So I'm going to click on his name. So there's his estimate, but now instead of being invoiced and completed, it's just marked closed. And I can click on it. And you'll see up here, it says closed. And so we'll only have that one invoice and we'll never have another invoice. You can see down here at the bottom how it ended up. So it's the bottom line that gives it away. Oops. We did invoice half. So that was the invoice subtotal. The remaining is that. So you think, well, if it's remaining, why doesn't he owe it? Because up here at the top, it's marked closed. So that's how you read that. Oops. I didn't scroll up enough. When you see that close mark, that's why, again, I say that should be bigger. But hopefully that doesn't happen too often. But let's say, okay, we did charge him sales tax, so he's not retail, right? But let's say he is retail. So we're selling to company. He turns around, he gets his first half of the shipment first, the half he paid for. And then they sell in his store like hotcakes. Whatever he's doing, he's selling like crazy. So he says, you know, can I cancel that estimate? I want to double the order. Okay, great, yeah, great, more money. So you go and close it. And now you create a new estimate and then double the numbers. So that would be another instance of why they might close an open estimate instead of just fulfilling it. Okay, so I'll save and close. So not every estimate is closed because they paid it. And just like before, you can manually close an estimate they decided not to go through with. Also, if they chicken out, I shouldn't say chicken out, if they cancel halfway through, that's fair too. So you can close it manually and then take the money for the first half. Does it make sense? Good, let's do another one. Let's go to Dusty here. So we'll create Dusty estimate here. I'll put the expiration date before I forget. I'll give Dusty till Friday the 4th. So we can do one coupon book. Let's do a couple hours of tutoring. So we'll make the coupon book taxable, but not the tutoring. And some pens. All right, so save and close, and then we have one estimate pending. Great. So I'll click on that estimate. So there's Dusty wins. Once again, I'm going to start invoice. And the first part is almost always exactly the same. So we'll click on add. But this time, we're going to use the third option. So custom amount for each line. Now remember, I did 3 items. So I've got 3 lines. I'll copy to invoice. So I click on the first line and see where it says due. And right now it's 0 of 44.99, or pardon me. I clicked it too soon. Well, it did, there it goes. 0 of 19.95 for the coupon book, right? So in this case, I can either do amount or percentage. I'm going to say he's going to pay for the whole coupon book up front. Remember, that's a charity thing. So let's say amount. And the amount's going to be the total, so $19.95. See where I got that number? If you're only charging him half, you could put in, you'd have to split the difference. So 882 or something, 83, somewhere around there. So you can do that. On the bookkeeping tutoring, I'm going to charge them 50%. So when I click on the line bookkeeping tutoring, under due, click on percent. And now I'm going to say 50%, half. I did, oh, nope, thank you. Typo. I wasn't watching where I was typing. Okay, so 50%. And then I'm going to go to pens with logo. And this one, I'm going to put an amount. And I'll just say 10. So see how this works? They're going to pay the $19.95 for this one, the 50% of the $44.90, so that amount, and then the half of the pens with company logo. So that's the other way you can work with estimates if they're paying portions. You can do it item by item. This would really be important again in construction. If you had, or you're, let's say you're building them a second story on their house, and you need to put all the structure in first. Maybe they pay 100% of the structure, and then the drywall and everything else that comes up later, they can pay half up front. You know, but that way it allows the business to not have too much money tied up in one project, so they could do more than one project at a time for different customers. And then just different things are agreed to differently. But again, hopefully this is spelled out either in the estimate, or if it's going to get this complicated, there's usually a contract to go with it. And everybody agrees up front. So he knows this is coming. Dusty will not be surprised. Okay, I'll save and close. When I go back to customers, I'll find Dusty and I can go ahead and receive that payment and that payment only. So I still have one from before yesterday. I'm going to turn that off. I just want to do today's. So there's 10/18/22. That's today. I'll put a check number again. I'll say it was check. Check number 9833. Save and close. Okay, so then I'll go do this, get the stuff, send it over to Dusty. We're ready to do the final. So I'll just click on estimate here and start invoice. So now when you see this, it's not going to be half, it's going to be broken up, right? Not half of the total. I'm going to click add. If I wanted to, I could do another custom amount for each line and go through that whole thing again and do it line by line. Or, what's more common is it's going to be the remaining total. Or if I wanted to, I could say 50% of the remaining total, right? Or 10%, or any amount I want. If you use this, you don't go line by line. It's just a total invoice. That's really handy if the invoice is long and there's no reason to break out each individual item, just do half the total. But in our case, we'll make this simple and do the remaining total of all lines. And there we go. And save and close. I'll look at Dusty here. And we're going to go ahead and receive the payment. Now, you remember, there is another way to receive payment. This is right in front of me, so that's probably easier. But just to practice it, I'm going to go up here to the QuickBooks logo, do new, customers receive payment. And then I'll pick Dusty here. So this is a little bit longer way to do it, but just because we haven't done it in a while, I'll mark it as a check. And this time I have to select the check mark. Instead of turning off one of the check marks, I have to select the one I want. The computer fills in the amount for me up here. And that came directly from that invoice. And I'll save and close. So just another way to receive payments. The other way is a little faster if you had a lot of them to do at once. This one works too. And I click on Doug. And you'll see there's the estimate. And it's now closed. That was the payment. I wanted to go back to estimate. See, it's more closed, all done. So the computer doesn't care how the customer pays and what proportions, as long as it's not past the due date and it's done in total and full, then it's happy. Any questions on that procedure? That's the rarest, where you actually break out line by line. It's pretty rare. But again, depending on your business, it might not be. And it gives you flexibility about how you bill the customer. And usually that's what the customers want. They like that kind of flexibility. And, depending on what they're doing, sometimes, they might, let's say they're building on a new room to their house. They may have to get the bank financing. So they have enough money to get their project started, but they're waiting for the bank to come through for the final amount to pay the contract. So there you go. So that's where you would have progress payments. That way everybody wins and everybody's happy. Any questions on those? All right. So we'll keep doing some estimates, but that's pretty much the range of estimates you'll run into. And tomorrow we're going to work with some vendors. So if there's no questions, we're done for the night. Yes. Let's see. Bob. So here was the estimate. Okay. So you remember, Bob was the one that we manually closed. Or pardon me, no, we got 2 transactions on it. We split it. So here's Bob, and it says here 2 linked transactions. So I have 2 invoices. That's when we did 50-50.
I did that.
Yeah.
On your customers, it doesn't say.
Because on mine, I think it was with your payments. So he has a payment, an old payment. Like, in fact, I'm going to click on receive payment here. He has, when we downloaded his or uploaded his information, see, he has one from February. And I think if you go into your checking account, look at the chart of accounts, and look at the register, Bob should show only 2 payments, and they should be this amount, $75.46. If one doesn't do that, then it got included. Do you have one bigger than the other?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's okay. Click on it. Yeah, there you go. So you included all of them. Let's be checking on. Turn those off. That was it. That was from yesterday. It won't let you. You're gonna have to change this amount to 75.46. And then say close. And then it's going to give you a hard time that this is probably a transaction. And you say yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta watch those check marks. They're handy. It's nice that QuickBooks does them, but then sometimes it's not right. You're welcome. Thank you, you too.
And